Greg Conlon, running for U.S. Senate, businessman, attorney, CPA, former president of California's PUC, and veteran. Greg has the experience to get the job done. Greg's focus is to create jobs in the United States by offering companies tax incentives, address immigrant issues by strengthening our borders, balance the federal budget without increasing taxes, increase U.S. students in higher education. Vote Greg Conlon for U.S. Senate.
Good morning or good afternoon. It's an honor for me to be here this morning. I want to spend a few minutes with you telling you who I am, cover some of the points in my video, and tell you why I think I'm the best candidate and the only candidate that can win. So, I've run for state treasurer twice, so you've seen me up here a couple times, and I appreciate your support in the past. And just to give you a little history on me, I grew up in a small town outside of Salt Lake City of 5,000 people. And I was an Eagle Scout at 14 years old. I went to work in a lead and zinc smelter for 7 years while I was going to high school and college. So I was a union man for 7 years. I was on my high school council for 4 years. And then I went to the University of Utah. And after 4 years at the University of Utah, I went into the Air Force, and contrary to Congressman Paul Cook's, I did not fly the Kitty Hawk. So I flew a large cargo plane for 3 years, going back and forth to Europe with Nike missiles and food and groceries and anything else that they wanted me to carry. So it was a great experience in serving my country, and I look forward to serving my country again in the U.S. Senate. So I think that my ballot designation, and as the video indicated, I'm a businessman, an attorney, a CPA, and as we talked about, a veteran. So I think that's my ballot designation is very strong and helped me get a lot of votes. But I think my issues that I covered in the video I want to talk about, the first one is creating jobs in the USA, which is on my hat. And the way I propose doing that, there's $2 trillion sitting in Europe or overseas by a handful or more of corporations that if they brought those funds back and created jobs, it would kickstart our economy and get us to grow at 3 or 4% instead of 1 or 2%. So I think that we need to have a mechanism to do that. I'm an attorney and CPA. If they bring the cash back and don't create the jobs, they don't get the reduced tax rate. My tax rate would be 5% instead of 35% just for this one time. $2 trillion, bringing it back, that would create 1 to 2 million jobs in the United States. So that would, people talk about it, you hear it in the debates, but nobody does anything. So I would draft legislation that tied it tight to the job creation. If they didn't create the jobs, they didn't get the benefit. We did this 10 or 15 years ago, and they got the money back, but they never created the jobs. So I would make sure that the jobs are created. My second issue is immigration. It's a very strong issue for all of us, and I want to give you my 4 or 5 planks that I would deal with. And the first one is to deal with there's 11 million illegals in this country. 40% of them came in here illegally. They came in as student visas or green cards. And when those expired, they did not leave. And it's just, to me, it's, hey, you made a deal. Like Trump says, you make a deal, you live up with the deal. The deal was you came over here, got your degree, and you left. Or you came over here and got your job, and after your green card expired, you left. They're not leaving. They're taking jobs away from our own people in the United States. So that's my position on the legal entries, to give them warning and tell them they have to leave back. And we know who they are, we know where they are, it's not a big mystery. We don't have to deport them, we just tell them it's time to leave. The next issue is to deal with the illegals that came in illegally. And I think that's the one that's most difficult. There's about 6 million of those. So we have to deal with it in a fair and compassionate way. And my solution is that if you have children that are born here and parents who are illegal, that you let them stay until they're until the children are 18 years old, and then ask them to leave. When I was 18 years old, my parents divided up and left, And I've supported myself my entire life from 18 years old on my own. And I don't see any reason why they can't do the same thing. So that would be the way to deal with the illegals that came in illegally. Now I want to talk a minute about the education, the higher education. There's 20,000 students in California going to the UC system that are either from out of state or out of country. And a lot of those are on student visas coming in from other countries. And you know, they're bringing these in at the expense of our own California students with equal or better GPAs and SATs. And it's just not fair to our own high school students. Those universities were created by the state of California for the California students, and we need to make sure that none of these slots are given, because we're not only giving away the education, when those students graduate, and their visas expire, they get the jobs in Silicon Valley and take them away from our own students and our own citizens here in California. So I would be tough on student visas to make sure that they were dealt with fairly and that they weren't keeping California students away from the UC system. 20,000 at this time. And I think from two other points. One is sanctuary cities. We would cut off all federal funding to sanctuary cities. I mean, if they can't follow the law, then they're going to be penalized. And I think the most difficult one, and probably some of the people in the audience aren't going to be happy with, is I would enforce the E-Verify system, which means that when somebody gets a job, they have to prove that they're a citizen, and the E-Verify system does that. Now everybody says, well, the system's not reliable, or it's the best we got, we should deal with it. If people aren't citizens, they don't get jobs. If they don't get jobs, they go home for their own benefit, not because we deported them. So that's why the E-Verify system is very important, and it's one that I would enforce. So I think the immigration issue is certainly one that I feel deeply passionate about, and I will pursue the best I can as a U.S. Senator. And then as a CPA and an attorney, I work hard to balance the budget without increasing taxes. And probably the last point I want to make is the filibuster rule. There's a rule in the Senate that if you can't get 60 votes, you don't bring a bill to the floor. Well, what's happened the last 8 years, most of the major legislation that came out of the House stopped in the Senate because 41 senators, generally Democrats, as it varied over the years, stopped those bills from being acted on. And that's why we have constipation in the federal government. It's because of that rule, not because the people didn't do their job that were elected. It's because they had to have 60 votes instead of 51 to get a bill on the floor. So I would spend the first 100 days spending 1 day on each senator, convincing them that their self-interest is not that important. They were sent here to represent their constituents and not to represent themselves to get reelected. So I think that if I go there, that's my plan. If Kamala Harris goes there, her plan will be to become president after 6 years. So we know she's not going to be around. So I think that filibuster rule needs to be dealt with, and I certainly would do it. Now I want to spend a minute about why I think I'm the best candidate that can win. I've got name recognition. I'm sorry, give me 30 seconds. I got name recognition. All right, I didn't look at the time, so I'll leave it there. Thank you very much. Great comment for you.